Happy Friday, beautiful people, and hello to you all out there tuning in for your first sip of the weekend. Tuned into your happy hour with Friday Feels. We're celebrating all you working professionals out there, doing your crazy craft, embracing the beauty of being human, and connecting authentically. We're your host, Sarge Nicole. We're living and working around the world, holding space for you and keeping it raw and real as we share fresh content with you every week. So follow us on LinkedIn at Friday Feels and Instagram at These Friday Feels for updates throughout the week.
In our last episode, we chatted to Debbie Ann C. Mungle, an actor, dancer, writer, filmmaker, entrepreneur, wife, and mom of twins. Debbie left her corporate job to follow her passions and shared with us some of her desires, learnings, and dreams, all in the making. And for this week's episode, we are chatting with young professional and dear friend, Lauryn M. Lauryn, welcome. We are so excited to have you on here. Lauryn is a former social media influencer who built her Instagram, Laura's Curls, up to 100K plus followers and is now leading the charge as social media manager at Evolve Chocolate, a chocolate company based out of New York. Yes, you heard that right. How does she do her job and not eat chocolates all day is a question I will always wonder. So today, let's find out and hear more about her journey as a young working professional. A very big welcome to you, Lauryn. It's wonderful to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Saj and Nicole. I'm very excited to be here. And I do eat chocolates all day.
Sounds like the life.
So this month we're talking about enduring through exhaustion, and we mentioned on our earlier episodes that this is one of the most popular topics that people like to talk about, that want to come on. And I thought it would be really interesting to do a session with someone who's a young working professional, and Nicole agreed. And so we were super excited to have you on today to talk about, your first corporate gig and what this topic means for you at this point in your life. So can you share a little bit with us in terms of the topic and exactly, what your relationship has been with enduring through exhaustion on your journey?
So I started off in digital marketing, digital content creation at a very young age, actually. I started off when I was maybe 14. I was obsessed with Instagram and Tumblr when that was like a huge thing. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever to be able to connect with people across the globe at any given time. So I was super obsessed with it. I didn't think it would go anywhere, but it has. And to this day, it's just been such a crazy ride. Enduring through exhaustion, with that, it's definitely come with a lot of exhaustion. But my relationship to exhaustion has definitely changed over the years, especially when it comes to burnout and all that good stuff. I really appreciate how you guys use the word enduring. I think that's such a beautiful word. It's such a powerful one because it implies that there's an end. And not only that there's an end to what you're going through, but you're also strong enough and committed enough to get to that end. And I'm definitely enduring. I'm definitely enduring these days as a young working professional at my first corporate gig. But through that enduring, I'm just very grateful to be where I am. And I think mixing gratitude with that enduring exhaustion is the biggest thing that anyone can do.
It's true. I'm glad you pointed that out. I think we didn't even think about it like that when we came up with the topic at the time. But enduring does mean that, this too shall pass. And life is a journey of ups and downs. And it's important to feel those moments. Saj and I, we've been talking a lot about that in the last while, the things we've been going through. And So you're at the start of your journey really as a working professional, and you've started this corporate job. So how has that felt for you? Like, what's been like the biggest challenge and learning?
Yeah, it's very surreal. Again, I'm pretty young, and all of my coworkers are a bit older than I am. I'm very blessed to be at a job that is honestly a dream job. Everything is absolutely wonderful, and the setup that I've been given has been so amazing. As a young working professional, I guess the biggest thing would be to stay true to myself. I think it's really easy to sort of fall into this mindset of having to be something else or someone else in order to be respected. But I've found that being authentic to who I am has gotten me the furthest, really, in this gig. And to any young person out there listening, I think or at any age, I think being authentic will get you the absolute furthest. And that's what I've been doing, and that's what's been carrying me through. And being authentic and looking after others and making everyone else's job easier as well as my own has really been carrying me through. But it's been a great experience. I mean, I've heard so many corporate horror stories about how people will switch up and change within 3 months. And, I've been here for a couple months now, like going on 8, I think, and everyone is still pretty much the same. And it's just been such a blessing. But I think in moving in authenticity, that's sort of what allowed this to be so beautiful and sort of what it turned out to be.
It's amazing. I think they say it takes about 6 months to really settle into a new job, and when you make that jump, that leap of faith into corporate, into a role that's working as you are now, to give yourself that grace and give yourself that time. And I love that you speak about of authenticity. I think that's something we talk about a lot too. How do you actually be true to yourself? Firstly, you need to know yourself. So, how's that journey been for you in terms of getting to know yourself, and then during work, that brings a whole different set of things.
That's such a great question, Nicole. It's hard. It's really hard, especially this day and age. I think with social media and just all these distractions, it's pulling you in every direction to be something else. And it's really hard to really sit and listen to sort of yourself and block out all the distractions and really listen to what you need, especially, at my age. I see a lot of my peers also struggling with this. And what I found is I feel as though my generation has a lot of really bad advice that sort of tells you to do the easier thing and to sort of move according to what feels good. But I found that really doing the harder the harder work really got me to sort of knowing myself a little bit more rather than the easier stuff. So for example, enduring through exhaustion, I think in today's age, the advice would be to, if something feels bad, then just don't do it. Take a break and really just sit back and do whatever you need to do to make yourself sort of feel better. But I found that when you really push through and you really do the work to sit and feel all the bad and really work through all of the things that sort of make you feel ill, that's where the real transformation comes. And that's sort of what I've been working with, and that's what's really gotten me to the point of knowing myself a little bit better.
It's interesting that you mentioned that. What's coming up for me is the whole concept of mental health awareness and mental health days that never used to be something when I started my first corporate job. You hardly take a sick day. Nobody wants to be sick, or if you're sick, you come into work because the project needs to get done. So it was a whole different ball game of being exhausted, enduring through it, and not necessarily taking all the self care. But I do agree with you that I think there was something about working through that. There was something about transforming through that. So there's this sweet balance in between, I think. What our generation, Saj, you and I probably experienced, and our parents' generation even more so, potentially. And then I think what's happening now in the younger working professional settings, where if you do take a mental health day and you do take that self-care, what do you do in that space? What does that actually look like? So yeah, it's important. I think you bring up a really, really good point there.
I think there's this illusion that it needs to be pretty and perfect, and self-care is, putting on a face mask and sitting back, and it is, right? Like you said, there's a sweet balance, but I think there's also this part that's very ugly about it, and that's going to take a lot of heartbreak, at least from what I found. But I found that when you go through the fire in that way, that's where you find the most help, the most insight, the most of yourself. And I've noticed, in my journey throughout growing my career, when I did really sit back and sort of just let life pass me by, that's when I was the most sad, and sort of the most, I felt incapable of taking charge. But once I took charge, even when it didn't feel good, that's what led me to just incredible opportunities and just a life that I couldn't foresee for myself.
That's amazing.
So, Lauren, you grew up, for listeners who don't know, Lauren grew up down the street from where we lived in Mastic, New York. And it's on the east end of Long Island. And it's been awesome to see you grow, Lauren. I mean, from being a little girl to hanging out with Saloni as Saloni's best friend. You also, you started your journey in terms of career in a very non-traditional path, right? You basically built your career on your own for so long when you were doing social media influencing. And I know that you've worked with so many large brands and innovative campaigns, and just the creativity is on a different level. I mean, some of the things that you guys come up with are amazing to me. And it's almost like second nature to you guys, which I really admire, and I think it's awesome. And I think all those learnings you definitely have to give yourself credit for, because that definitely takes a lot of guts and chutzpah and creativity. And just because it comes naturally in certain aspects doesn't mean that it's not unique or amazing. So that's one. And then two, I wonder, as you transition that same skill set into your job now, do you find that it really helps you to kind of have that eye, and you did the work to kind of get, in terms of accolades, in terms of breaking through the noise and finding your niche? That was a lot of work, I'm sure, to figure out what products to review and what to do every day and which side of yourself. And now that you're managing a brand for another company, do you feel like that insight has really helped you understand, consumers of either your generation or others? I'm just really curious, because that's not a traditional kind of path, but it is one that people are starting to play between the lines of a lot more, going between freelancer and corporate worker, working with corporates, consulting, working full time. We're seeing a lot more people that are kind of deciding. I mean, I myself personally have done that a few times in my career. Just really curious from your point of view, what that journey has been like for you.
Thank you, Sedge. For those of you also who don't know, Sedge, since I was a little girl, I've always looked up to her as this amazing boss woman to the point where I was you were so, not intimidating, but you were just so strong and you knew exactly what you wanted. And I've always really admired that about you as well. Of course, thank you.
Aw, thank you. Don't make me cry on here.
It's weird because I've always known that this is sort of what I wanted to do. But then at the same time, I didn't know. And then at the same time, I didn't think it was possible for me in a way. To give context, in high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do at all. When I graduated, all of my friends had parties and everyone was super excited, but I remember just being devastated and going to the foot of my parents' bed and just bawling my eyes out because I didn't know what I was going to do next. I didn't know what to do for college. I didn't know what to do in terms of a trade. I just thought I was just sort of in this weird limbo. When I started my Instagram blog, I think this was in 2017. I was very shy. I didn't think anyone would sort of listen to me or want to see me. So it was just a hobby. And then it took off to something I couldn't have even imagined. And, then the exhaustion kicked in and I couldn't see myself doing that longer term and for a longer term. And then, I started doing brand consulting and I also had this doubt set in that was like, I don't have the 4-year degree. I don't have these things. How am I going to land a, a job that I really care about? And then it came. And I think always having that hope within you more than anything, more than sort of going the traditional route, that hope and that passion will always drive you to the next best thing. And it will come with exhaustion, it will come with frustration and not knowing what you're gonna do. But in my experience, it always works out in the end. If you have a really frustrating time, it will get better. And I've always held on to that. I didn't go the traditional route at all, and by some miracle, I will say that I'm here, and I'm very blessed to be here, like I said. Right now, to answer your question, I'm just really trying my best to work on my character to be the best that I can be at this job, even though I didn't go the traditional route. I feel as though, this isn't true, but I feel as though I have a lot to prove to myself more than anyone that I am capable of doing this, and I am a valuable player. There's a lot of self sabotage and what's the word? I forgot what it's called. It's when not self sabotage, when you think that not identity. There's a word for it that's getting thrown around a lot, and I'm experiencing a bit of that.
Is it imposter syndrome?
Imposter syndrome. There's a lot of thank you. There's a lot of imposter syndrome that also comes with it as well. But I'm learning that it's just an illusion, and I just move past it and do the best that I possibly can for myself and for my company and just for my career moving forward. I think it's such an amazing age we're living in where you don't have to go the traditional route anymore, and there's so much grace that comes with it, and there's so much just hope and freedom. And I'm just very blessed that I've gotten this far with hope and trying my absolute best to make something of what I've made in the past.
That was very well said. I think that you're completely right. And I think you also add so much to the table. I'm 100% a believer in hard work and dedication and hustle gets you further than a degree. 100%. I don't think I use anything much. I wouldn't say that. Let me not say I don't use anything much from my degree. But there's so much that you learn that you don't learn in school,
Yeah.
to be quite honest. And it's really what you make out of it. And it's really a plus that you have this experience because you know what it takes to build a brand because you've built a brand. There's nobody in school who's only done that, who's really just went to school that would learn that from a textbook. And it begs the question and it really shows you that you learn so much more. Like even we learned so much more by doing Friday Feels than I would have ever read, to be quite honest. We learn things every day. And it's kind of nuts to hear, even a lot of things that you're feeling are things that I feel on a daily basis here. And so you just kind of get better at showing up or pushing yourself, or your bills push you, I don't know, or your problems push you, or your dreams push you. And it's really about making that bridge to have your dreams push you rather than your problems push you. And that's a lifelong thing for me personally. But I think even at your age, I mean, at 24, I was not thinking like that at all. I wish I was, but I was just like, okay, everybody's got a job. Let me go get a job. This kind of sucks, but this is what everybody else is doing. I'm going to go do this. Yeah, I think it's such an interesting point of view that you have. I know you've always been a spiritual person, but I think you also, if you ever wanted to go into motivational speaking, I think there's a place for you, because I always feel really hyped up when I talk to you.
Thank you so much.
And just by your grace. And one time I was smiling and my boyfriend came downstairs. He's like, who are you talking to like that? And I was like, I'm talking to Lauren. And she told me how great I did at this and this and this. I was like, I wish everybody greeted me like Lauren. Because I think you said something like, have the best day ever or something. I was like, yes, exactly. Why shouldn't I have the best day ever? And he was just like, what? And I was like, yeah, why don't you tell me that every morning? He was just like, who's Lauren? Like, what is she doing? Because I don't think he had met you in person yet. But, that's definitely a light that you can't dim. So you should definitely pull more towards that. And I think it's really helpful to hear people who are younger speak like that and think like that, because it will carry you very well in your career. Sometimes when you only have one job, you don't know like your ups and downs, or really, what's normal, what's not. That's what I found a lot of times with, mentoring young professionals, is they'll say things. I mean, it's like any relationship, right? If it's new, you don't really know how to navigate it. But if you follow your intuition, then it really does help, like with everything, right? Same with professional ones. So that's awesome to hear. Super proud of you and the strides that you've made personally and professionally. I think they're really important, and they really make up somebody who is a working professional. You can't take someone's personal life away from them and expect them to be the same person. So they go hand in hand.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also wanted to just mention that I think it's so beautiful that you're mentioning the emotion behind going through all these things, and like you were saying, it's not always pretty. But I think what makes it even more interesting is that often the reason that we are exhausted is because we are trying to keep up with other people's expectations. When you're really true with yourself, you're obviously going to go through trials and tribulations, even if you're following your intuition, even if you're following your joy. But it gets even harder when you are then trying to play amongst society's rules for your life. And I think it's beautiful that you haven't done that in your journey. I'm sure at some point, kids aren't going to go through the traditional school system the way that they are now, because things are changing. Like you said, you don't have to have a degree to be an incredible woman in the world. And my dad once said to me, when you're studying different subjects, university or even just school, all that those subjects are doing is teaching you a way of thinking. Your brain is integrating, your brain's growing, your body's growing, And so whether you do that in a classroom in a university setting, or whether you do that in experiential learning in a corporate setting or in a professional setting of your choice, you're still learning, you're still growing. And I think that's really beautiful that you can be an inspiration for people who might not even want to go to university, and be successful in the world. So yeah, it's a wonderful journey you've walked so far.
Growing up, I attended a Caribbean church, and, and it was one of the most, it was so much fun. I'll say that. It was so much fun. And just the people that I've met there, the mentors that I've had, none of them have any type of formal education, but the wisdom that they would just bestow was so rich and powerful. I've never gotten that in a classroom. I've never gotten that in a college course. And it just opens your eyes that the non-traditional route, it is scary, don't get me wrong. And there's a lot of self-doubt there, don't get me wrong. But again, if you just believe with all of your heart that this is what I want to do, this is how I'm going to get it, have the right people around you that speak life into you, there's nothing that you can't do. I am a very shy person, and I haven't been the most confident in my life. And Saj, you can attest to this. I was a very, again, very, very shy kid, and I didn't have much belief in myself, if any, up until I was maybe 22. But I always knew that it was going to work out in some way. And again, I didn't think it would be in this way, where I'm truly, like, extremely happy with where I am in life. But that just goes to show you that if you keep going, if you keep moving, if you keep believing, something beautiful will come out of it. It just has to. That's really what's on my heart. And thank you, Nicole. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. And just to assure you that the 30s are a lot easier. Don't worry. I mean, it's still not like moonshine and roses and blossoms all the time, but 20s are hard. The 20s are really hard. They challenge you, and you're finding who you are in the world. And so it does seem to get easier. I know there's this thing called the Saturn return that kicks in when you turn 30 as a woman. I can't speak for men, but something changes. So you have lots to look forward to in that sense. And yeah, and speaking of classroom, I mean, 10 years ago, you would have been 14. You obviously didn't think your life would be here where you are now. What did you want to be when you were 14? Like, if you think back.
Funnily enough, when I was younger, my best friend and I, who just so happens to be your little sister, Saj, we've almost been friends for 20 years now. We always said that when we're older, we would be working in New York City and we would be wearing pink suits with briefcases, or an archaeologist. That was like my thing. That's what I wanted to be. If not an archaeologist, then a rock star. But that didn't work out. And throughout my high school years, I had a lot going on at home. My sister was very, very sick, and I didn't have much of a social life outside of. I had my little friends, but outside of Saloni, who was like my ride or die, I didn't really have much of a social life other than that. When I was 14, I really didn't think that I would really, not to be sort of morbid, I guess, but I had such a low image of just my career. I didn't really think that I would amount to much back then. And I would tell myself that too. And I would act accordingly to that. And just over the years, that grew and grew and grew until something snapped where I was like, well, I'm gonna try, you know. And all of my peers around me, they knew what they wanted to be. They wanted to be doctors and lawyers and engineers, and they were in all these amazing programs and AP classes. And I remember just sitting back and being like, I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like everyone knows something that I don't. And sort of what I thought of myself and of my life at the time. But again, I think just living life a little bit more, getting some experience, some really deep seated heartbreak sometimes really pushes you to want better for yourself and just do better. And yeah, that's sort of where I was.
I think that's awesome, candid feedback. I think, something that we try to do on this podcast a lot is just kind of shine a light behind people's, what you see when you meet them and even their accolades, right? Because very much so, it's easy to write a resume, but it's very hard to kind of see the person beneath it. And, I had an experience with this a few weeks ago, even, where someone introed me to a young professional. It's like, oh, they're looking for a gig. Can you take a look? And the resume was awesome. And so when I got on the phone, it's just the person had no life in them. And I thought, and they really say this, right? And this is something that, even myself, maybe Nicole, it's very different when you are the hiring manager, you are the CEO, you are the person making the directions. I've worked, most of my life in corporate while also doing things on my own. But now that it's about hiring other people rather than just working with them, it's true. They say, like, you want to work with people you like. You want to work with people that you can grab a beer with after work. And it's easier for me to navigate that setting because I understood the expectation after having a lot of jobs, knowing how to interact with people, being like more extroverted in that sense. I used to get a lot of interviews. I knew how to navigate them. But now when you're actually looking to hire, I'm like, okay, well, it's a small company. I got to talk to this person all the time. Like, I also need them to bring their best self. And so sometimes when you're working with more people, it's almost like the risk is spread out more, to be quite honest. And then if I hire one more person and it's me, Nicole, one more person, that's 30% of our risk is now there. So if it doesn't work out with that person, then you start all over. And I think it's really great that you have that sort of mindset in terms of, working on yourself as an individual. And I will say, when you were younger, I just thought of you as like a model. I did not think that you were shy or not self-confident at all. And that just goes to show you that sometimes you're your own, worst critic. I do it all the time. And to Nicole's point, it does get easier when you're in your 30s. That part of it, I will say. Maybe not the self-critic part, but also just showing up for yourself and proving to yourself, oh, I was able to do X, Y, Z. So therefore, I have the skills to go do the next phase. That's a big thing that's helped me, that you just kind of prove to yourself, like, even if you're feeling doubtful, you prove to yourself like a math equation, like, oh, I feel like I can't do this. Well, you did do all these things. I keep a list of all these things. And there's a lot of people that do that, even super successful people. I think I've mentioned her book before, but Lisa Bilyeu's Radical Confidence. She and her husband grew Quest. I think it's like protein bars to, like, I think they sold it for like $1 billion or something. And they started it. And she wears like a superwoman necklace. She wears pink because she really likes it. She has like a whole entire regimen when she has people coming on her podcast that are there just to build her confidence. Like with the gym, she'll put up pictures and things that she's done before. And it's those little things that add up. Like if you start your day that way versus like just kind of rolling out, it makes a big difference. And yeah, I need to get better at that. But there are certain things, like certain aspects that I have kind of like jotted down and definitely helped me. So I would say, as a young professional, it's nice that you actually take time to realize that. When I think about myself 10 years ago, I don't think she was thinking about any of those things. She was definitely having fun. And Nicole and I were actually talking about this last week. It's like, did we think we would be here at 35? And what would we tell our like 10 years ago self, or 25-year-old self? And I was like, I don't know, man, but this is definitely a different image than what I thought it would be. But it is more about, one comment that we both agreed on is, at least we're doing things that we're living on our own terms, which is something that I do feel like younger people, one, sometimes have trouble realizing that is a really good marker for success, is living life on your own terms in certain ways. It could be financially, it could be, mentally or emotionally, like you choose to say the things that bother you or the things that you don't want to stand up with. So there's a fine line between balancing and fitting in, and then like standing out and having the confidence to do that. Meaning like you're okay with, hey, if no one agrees with me, I don't really care. But this is what I want to do. This is what feels good. For me, that was like moving into startups. I didn't have any friends that did it when I did it. I was trained to go into finance, and I went for some of those positions. one, didn't like it. Two, didn't actually, because people could realize that I didn't like it, I tended to not get hired at some of them. And I was okay with that when I walked into a different world where I felt like I was more accepted, my ideas were more heard, and it was more exciting for me. You didn't have to ask me to go to work every day and have to dread it. So I think those are little inklings that you could kind of follow along as breadcrumbs in your 20s that I wish someone had told me.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think, we both grew up Caribbean, and it's like, hey, you gotta be the breadwinner of the family, and you have to be a doctor, a lawyer, or engineer. And luckily, my parents, when I was a teenager, became a lot more lenient. But with that in the back of your mind, whatever you choose to do that makes that would make you happy, you sort of saw it as like, well, it's not what everyone else is doing, so it's not right, right? Or it'll never fulfill me. But then I got a little older after realizing that, and I saw my friends that went into these companies that are highly coveted and to die for, and they would say, I hate where I work, I hate my life, I hate the people that I'm around. I wish I never got into this. I want to change everything. And I was sort of like, wow, here I am thinking you have it absolutely set up, you're good. But, I guess the grass is always greener, and it's so important to sort of stand on, what you truly want to do in your heart of heart, no matter what it is, and to know this is good for me. And no matter what people say, even my own family, I know that this is right for me at this moment. And it's hard at first because there's a lot of noise. But the funny thing is that what I realized is once you really settle with that, then people start to take notice too, and they start to give you that sort of respect in a really weird way, or just validation that you're not even looking for anymore. It's so funny how that works. But yeah, I completely agree, Sedge, and I'm very glad that I can't wait till my 30s. Honestly, I'm really excited.
Listen, by no means, enjoy your 20s, okay? You can
Yeah.
eat whatever you want. You could be out till God knows what time and get back up. Oh my goodness. I had a lot of fun, especially kind of like being a young professional where all you have to kind of worry about. I mean, I'm not saying that it's easy. I probably didn't feel that way at the time, but now looking back, I'm like, wow, I had way less responsibilities. My friends were single, so we could just like pick up and go and do stuff. And it's kind of hard to cultivate that same feeling. Like even if I do things with my friends now and they're like spontaneous, like I went to Target and it was like I was like, damn, this is fun. Like I read part of the book. Like I'm just like, damn, I'm such a loser. Like this is fun for me. And people write that all the time. Like I see people writing that all the time. They're like, oh, going out in our 20s and then going out in our 30s was like building a Lego set. And it was just like, and I think I was thinking about it and I was like, it's probably because we've done it so much, like in our 20s, that even doing the same thing in our 20s now is like going out, drinking a lot, hanging out, having fun. I would be like, okay, I've done that a million times. Like, I want to do something different. Like, building the Lego set is actually different for me. So it's not necessarily like, that's probably why we get a thrill out of things that are almost like different, unique. But yeah, people say that when you're older, like, this is the best time of your life. And I know people used to say that all the time to me when I was younger. And I used to always be like, it doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel like it. Because there's so much uncertainty. But I think it's awesome that you kind of, thank you for coming on and actually sharing, like Nicole said, the emotions that have kind of been behind a lot of your moves. And even because that's really important that people hear that. Like I said, like if you never shared it, I would never know. Maybe you never knew what my point of view was, but it's definitely helpful. Hopefully it helps somebody who is listening, that you kind of can take some of the gems that Lauryn mentioned today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing so honestly and openly. And, you've kind of taken me back in time when I think back to where I was when I was 24. I just started my own first corporate gig at KPMG as well. And yeah, what a wild ride. So I took the opposite route to you, where I kind of worked corporate first and now getting more into creative. So, at the time I had decided not to pursue being a chartered accountant further, and my parents were really upset with me. And so I totally get what you're saying. I think that there's so much pressure around performance and achievement and being this successful person in the world. But I think it's beautiful that you show your true self in a gentle way, shining your light in the world. So doing what feels good for you. So what is in store for you 1 year from now if you had to fast forward?
1 year from now. 1 year from now, I hope and pray that I'm still a part of this amazing team and, get evolved to the next level. We're steadily working on that. And I'm just really excited to see where it goes. Again, my job sometimes doesn't even feel like a job. It just feels like I'm a part of this family that actually cares about me and cares about my ideas. Switching from being my own creative to a creative for a company, it still feels like I'm my own creative, which is so special. And, working with a team, honestly, it's not always the easiest thing, but I think once you hit that breakthrough where everyone's on the same page, there's nothing like it. So I hope I'm still there. I'm also working on some personal projects as well that I hope will see the light of day, and I'm actively working towards it, and just learning, and hopefully at 25 the whole frontal thing happens, the prefrontal lobe. I don't know, that whole thing happens, and I'm excited for that. And I'm just really excited to get older because, in the past I've sort of, I guess, dreaded it. I don't know, but now I'm seeing that it's really such a blessing just to see, just to learn and grow. There's so much to learn, and I'm excited for it.
And along your journey, what do you feel has been the best professional advice that you've received?
I guess the best professional advice I've ever received was from my brother, and he said this in passing. He said, "Never be someone you're not at your job, or try to be someone you're not at your job, because if you ever leave your job, or say one day, they don't need your services anymore and you get laid off, hired, not only do you lose your job, but you lose your soul." So I'm very cognizant of that.
I will say my siblings and you and your siblings are very old souls. your advice is like that of like an 80-year-old person sometimes. And it's very wise. I'm just like, where do you guys get these things from? But listen, it makes me feel better too when I listen to some of them. Very profound advice, I would say, from your brother. And it's true. It's very hard balance. People struggle with this all the time, personally and professionally, just kind of unpacking that you don't want to lose yourself based on a job. And I know me personally, I've had a tendency to overwork in certain situations and then go through the burnout and then and I'm still, again, working on that. But I remember earlier on in my career, I had a lot of friends that went the traditional route, worked for very prestigious companies, etc. And I remember one of my roommates, she worked for one of the big four accounting firms, and she was saying, "Oh, we get unlimited vacation. I hate this." And I was like, "Why would you hate it? You're getting unlimited vacation." And that was a big thing that was happening. The startups started doing it. And so then the bigger companies decided they wanted to do it. So instead of getting like the set 2 weeks when you start, they started changing it to saying unlimited. And she's like, "At least when I had 2 weeks, I knew I had it 2 weeks. But when they change it to unlimited, nobody wants to take it because everybody's like either trying to outcompete themselves or doesn't want to look lazy. And so they never actually end up taking it." And there's actually a lot of studies that have been done where when you say unlimited vacation, they actually take less vacation than they would have been allotted. And then it was very interesting because a few years later, then some companies started implementing a mandatory vacation because people just wouldn't take the vacation. And then also I don't even know if they, like, how they were compensating them for it. Because they said unlimited, they didn't have to necessarily, like, if you quit and let's say for 5 years you've been working at this company and you took 5 days, they weren't going to pay you out like 2 weeks for those 5 years. You wouldn't get like 10 weeks paid because there was unlimited. So, you know, it's the same thing in life, right? Like, if you don't take the time for yourself, you know, you're going to kind of pay for it one way or the other. And it shouldn't be a job that has to tell you that. It's like a lot more is being more self-reliant and you telling yourself, this is how I feel. You telling yourself, this is not okay in the workplace. You telling yourself, oh, I should be, you know, more like this, XYZ. So I would say if I had to leave you with a few words for getting older, that's what gets easier, is the kind of you telling yourself and like realizing over and over, okay, I went through a few jobs now. We know how this goes. This is what is kind of expected, etc. So while it's fun getting older because you have more experience, doesn't mean your bones don't hurt more and it gets harder. So you kind of have that balance to look forward to, Lauren.
I'm excited. I'm very excited. So.
Oh, well, we're very excited for you, and you have an incredible journey ahead of you. Thank you for sharing the start of this with us. Look forward to 10 years from now having you on the podcast again. And then we can talk about what 35 feels like. And then we'll be like, well, we remember that. If we remember that feeling, that podcast. But thank you so much. And yeah, I guess just a quick gems of the week for us, what we do each time on the episode is really talking about what filled your cup for the week, what made you feel like you could be a good working professional, something that happened. So, Saj, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, we talked a little bit about validation on this episode. And, you know, as we are building and growing these companies, I think for me, just kind of, I picked up a book on investing and I was reading. It was almost like top advice from people who have had a lot of success financially and how they look at things. And, you know, as someone who is in real estate, for me, I found it, I mean, I would say I found it very interesting because I always take the approach of the market. Kind of in any industry, the market tells you what they want. The more people you talk to, the more you understand. And then you kind of make your decisions based on that. And but I've been talking to a lot of people in the market. There's a lot of stuff going on. And so sometimes it's very hard, like you said, to cut through the noise and really figure out, like, what do you think? Why do you think this? Like, can you support it? And that doesn't just go for investing, that goes for a lot of things. And so I was reading a few pieces of commentary from people who have been in the market for a really long time, just trying to understand what's going on. And they were saying quite a lot of the same thing. And I felt really validated because I was like, I'm having a hard time understanding what's going on. And so for me, I thought that was an interesting gem of the week because it transcends into other parts of your life. Is just, you know, how do you kind of find that validation? One of it is like, how do you find your voice? And then 2 is like, how do you find that validation? Is it you? Are you the only one? And for some of the industries that I work in, I feel like that you do kind of need to know what's going on. It's not so much about finding your own voice first. It's about understanding the playing field and then finding your voice through it. And for me, reading that, I was like, wow, I always find it very interesting how people get where they are. And so some of those people would share like, oh, when I started, it was like this. So when I started, it was like that. And now, and very much so, a lot of it is they're pulling wisdom from older people who are mentors, who are sharing their journey, who would take them under their wing, etc. And I feel like, you know, for a lot of my life, it's not, I was thinking about this week. It's not like I have an older sibling or somebody who is kind of already charted some sort of path. and you're just kind of following along. You're charting your own path. And so it became very apparent to me, like last week, and I was like, oh, that could be why stuff is a lot harder for me, but also easier in a way, because you're not following in somebody else's footsteps, right? You have the freedom to make your own. And it's scary, but it's also, I think a lot of the anxiety I was feeling about things, I could like put a pin in it and be like, oh, this is why it's like this. Even with Friday Feels, what we do is new. It's not anything I've worked on personally in my life before. There's nobody in my life really that I know who has done it in the way that we're doing it. So for us, I think about those things a lot. And for my gem of the week, it was a piece of validation for me that, yes, I'm thinking about things in the right way without actually having to talk to, mentors or people that, and I say that with quotes, because sometimes they're just not on your journey. They can't fully understand. So it was a good lesson for me in trusting myself. How about you, Nicole?
I'm glad you got that sense and feeling this week. For me, gosh, it's been an interesting week. It's been an interesting couple of weeks. I really have felt like the universe has been, it's Mercury retrograde for anyone that enjoys astrology. We're in the middle of 2 different eclipses. Like, it's all happening in the world right now of energy. And so I've really felt like the universe is pushing me to find my feelings, feel my feelings, stop fighting my feelings. And yeah, and this week has just been like that breakthrough moment of kind of a bit of a wake up of like, hey, okay, wow, it's been a year since the layoff. It's I find myself in the French countryside. What is going on? Like, what's next? And but also at the same time feeling, gosh, I really love who I am. I'm really happy at where I am in my life. I just might not know exactly what the next step looks like, and that's okay. So turning 35 has definitely been a really interesting kind of turning point for me. I guess I'm like a midlife crisis, kind of feeling. So, so yeah, and on top of all of that, Gracie was really sick, and so that definitely added to the feelings of feeling kind of helpless. And knowing that I'm in a small village, and most of the time things are just closed because it's small, so the vet's not always open. So yeah, some interesting challenges, but really wonderful breakthroughs in myself, and just grateful for it all. So, what about you, Lauren?
That's really beautiful, Nicole. That's really, really beautiful. It's like when you're in a position of not knowing where you're gonna go next, or even where you are right now, but still being like, it's whatever. Like, it's gonna work out. It's fine, and I like where I am. That's a really great feeling. That's really a great feeling. And such to what you said, being the teacher and the student at the same time, I think that's also very scary. But it's also, once you learn what you need to learn, it's like you learn that you're capable of doing anything, and there's nothing more rewarding than that too. So thank you. That really, those 2 gems really blessed me, guys. Thank you. Gem. I've been reading this book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. Amazing book, amazing book. And when I was done reading it this morning, I'm on week 2. I tried in the past, but I I failed. So now I'm starting it again. And one of the little side quotes that they have in the book, I forgot who it was by, but it said, the last line said, forget about yourself. And I found that when things get really hard, the only thing you can think about is like me. Like, how am I going to get out of this? How am I going to get through this? How am I going to finish this task? But I found that noticing what other people are going through is the number one. It's the best medicine, because not only can you help them, which then will teach you how to help yourself. You also feel a sense of accomplishment and just I guess, the love, knowing that you're going through so much, but you to another person, and that's really been helping me. I'm not the best at it, but I'm trying to be, and just see outside of myself a lot more. And yeah, that's my gem of the week. Sometimes you gotta forget about yourself to learn about yourself, I guess.
I love that. Then that is a great book, and I have also not finished it. The Artist's Way. It's tough because it asks a lot from you. You know, it's not just a book you read, and it's you practicing with yourself. I know she talks about your morning pages and kind of getting up and then just writing and getting it all out, whether it's pretty or ugly or makes sense and doesn't make sense. And it's a beautiful practice.
That's awesome. I've never heard of that book.
That's a good
I'll
one.
definitely have to check it out.
And then I guess for all our audience listening out there, some final thoughts. What was your first corporate gig like? Were you thriving? Were you diving? Were you dying? What was the best thing that it taught you? You know, how were you enduring through exhaustion? If you did feel exhausted, and if not, we'd like to hear why. And please share with us.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. Remember to tag us using hashtag These Friday Feels to share your stories, and listen to us on all your favorite platforms. And to work with us or have us broadcast Friday Feels from your space and organize your next workcation, reach out to us at hello@friday-feels.co.
And next week, we have a very cool gentleman in store in the Cape Co-Living Hustle House and Travel Tractions space, a multipreneur, Matt Davison from South Africa. And it might be too early for Black Friday, but we're feeling it. So stay tuned for some interesting stories about how he navigated hospitality during lockdown and also the emergence from it. And thank you so much, Lauren, for joining us today. Do you want to maybe just quickly tell people where they can find you?
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, guys. And I think you're doing an awesome thing with this podcast. You're giving real deal life advice, and I've had an amazing time listening. So thank you. You can find me on LinkedIn with my name, Lauryn Muir. If you ever want any type of brand consulting or just brand insight for socials, I have a YouTube channel at Laura's Curls and an Instagram at Laura's Curls as well that I have not been active on in years. However, I hope to be very soon, I will say. And that's where you can find me. I hope you guys have an awesome day, and I hope you can be blessed with at least one thing that I've shared on this episode.
Thanks, Lauren. And that until next time, that is our mix. We've had fun mingling with you, and we wish you safe travels into your bed, into the night, and into this awesome weekend. So see you next week, and keep it real.